Bullies grabbed the black girl's collar. What she did shocked everyone. Jasmine had always preferred the quiet. Ridgewood High, with its mix of cliques and loud personalities, often felt like a chaotic place, but Jasmine had learned how to navigate it with ease. As a black girl in a predominantly white school, she knew that standing out would draw attention she didn't want. So she kept her head down, focused on her studies, and stayed away from the drama. She wasn't the shy, introverted type. Quite the opposite, in fact. But Jasmine understood the power of blending in. The less attention she drew, the less likely she would be to become a target for the typical high school bullying. The taunts and whispers were ever present, but Jasmine had grown accustomed to them. She had learned to let the insults slide off her back, to rise above them, and to focus on what really mattered. Today, though, something felt different. As Jasmine walked down the school's crowded hallway, she sensed a subtle shift in the air. It was a typical day, students milling about, exchanging gossip, and rushing to their next classes. But as she passed by the lockers, she noticed the sharp, curious glances aimed her way. At first, she ignored them. Nothing new. But as she moved further down the hall, a growing unease crept up her spine. Someone was watching her, and she couldn't shake the feeling. At the far end of the hallway stood Jack, the biggest bully in the school. He was a tall, stocky figure who always seemed to carry an air of arrogance. His loud voice could often be heard making snide comments or cracking jokes at someone else's expense. It wasn't the first time he had looked at her, but today his eyes lingered a little longer than usual. The usual sneer on his face was there, and his group of friends, also notorious for their bullying, was close by, whispering amongst themselves. Jasmine didn't let it bother her. She kept walking with her head held high, clutching her books against her chest. She was almost used to being the subject of ridicule, and today would be no different. But as she approached her next class, Jasmine could hear the faint sound of footsteps behind her, growing closer. Before she could turn to see who it was, she felt a hand grab her shoulder. The grip was firm, and the tug pulled her backward, causing her to stumble. Jack's voice was cold and filled with mockery. "Where do you think you're going, Jasmine? This is my school," he sneered. Her stomach churned, but Jasmine refused to let him see her fear. She quickly regained her balance, standing tall as she faced him. "Let go of me, Jack," she said, her voice calm but firm. But Jack only tightened his grip, pulling her toward the lockers, forcing her to look up at him with disdain. Her heart raced, but she steadied her breathing. She wouldn't let him break her composure, not today. Not ever. Little did she know, the moment that was about to unfold would test her in ways she couldn't imagine. The storm was coming, and Jasmine would have to decide how to face it. Would she stand her ground, or would she crumble like so many others before her? The answer would come soon enough, and it would change everything. Jack tightened his grip, pulling Jasmine closer to the lockers. His friends were standing nearby, laughing and egging him on, their eyes gleaming with amusement. Jasmine felt a wave of frustration building up inside her. This was not how it was supposed to be. This wasn't how she wanted to spend her last year of high school. The constant taunts, the ridicule, it was all wearing her down, even though she never let it show on the outside. "Let go of me, Jack," she repeated, her voice steady but firm. She wasn't going to let him win. Jack smirked, leaning in closer. "What, you think you're too good for this?" he sneered, his breath hot against her face. "You're just a black girl who doesn't belong here." His words hit her harder than she wanted to admit, but Jasmine refused to let him see how much they stung. She had heard it all before. This was nothing new. Jack's brand of cruelty was all too familiar, the kind that fed off of making others feel small. She wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of seeing her hurt. Without warning, she brought her knee up sharply, catching Jack off guard. He stumbled back, releasing his grip on her shoulder, and she took a step back, finally free from his grasp. Her heart was racing, but she refused to back down. "You think you can talk down to me like that?" Jasmine's voice was low but powerful. "You think I'm weak? That's not going to work." The students who had been watching stood in stunned silence, unsure of how to react. This wasn't the reaction they had expected. They were used to seeing Jasmine cower or retreat, but not this. Not now. Jack, momentarily thrown off balance, regained his composure and scowled at her. "You really think you can talk to me like that? You're nothing." Jasmine's chest tightened, but her resolve only grew stronger. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about standing up for herself. For all the time she had been made to feel like she didn't matter. This was her moment, her chance to show everyone that she wouldn't be bullied anymore. "You don't get to decide my worth," she said, her voice steady as she faced him. "You don't get to make me feel small. I'm not afraid of you, Jack, and I'm not afraid of anyone who thinks they can break me." Jack's friends, still silent, exchanged uncertain glances. They had never seen Jasmine like this before. She wasn't the shy girl who tried to stay out of the way anymore. She was standing up for herself, and something about that made them uneasy. But Jack wasn't ready to let it go. His face reddened with anger, and he took a step toward her, raising his hand as if to strike. The crowd around them tensed, waiting for the next move. But before Jack could make a move, a voice rang out from behind them. "Hey, what do you think you're doing?" Jasmine turned to see her best friend, Tyrell, rushing over with a furious expression on his face. Tyrell had always been the one to have her back, and in that moment she was grateful for his presence. He stood between her and Jack, blocking the bully's path. Jack, looking like he had just been caught doing something he knew he shouldn't have, hesitated. The silence in the hallway grew thicker, the tension palpable. Jasmine stood there, her chest still tight with adrenaline, but now there was a sense of triumph bubbling up inside her. She had stood up for herself. She had taken control, and no matter what happened next, she knew one thing. She wasn't going to be afraid anymore. The hallways of Ridgewood High had become eerily silent. Jack, still caught off guard by Jasmine's sudden confidence, took a few hesitant steps back. His friends, who had once been so eager to join in, were now unsure of what to do. Tyrell, standing between Jasmine and Jack, glared at the bully with an intensity that suggested he wasn't about to back down either. "What's going on here?" Tyrell's voice cut through the tension like a knife. "You think you can put your hands on her and get away with it?" Jack didn't say anything right away. His gaze flicked from Tyrell to Jasmine, who stood tall, unwavering, with her arms crossed over her chest. He had expected her to shrink, to back down, like so many others before her. But now she stood firm, her expression calm but resolute. That wasn't how this was supposed to go. The group of students around them shifted uncomfortably, but no one dared to intervene. They had seen this before. Bullies like Jack often got away with everything, but Jasmine wasn't the type to let it slide. She had taken control of the situation, and now everyone was waiting to see how it would unfold. Jack's face twisted with frustration, and for a moment it seemed like he might lash out. But just as quickly his anger was replaced with a sheepish look. He opened his mouth to speak, but the words seemed to get stuck in his throat. "Don't say anything else, Jack," Tyrell warned, his voice calm but firm. "You've already done enough. You're not getting away with it this time." Jasmine stood silently behind him, her body still tense but no longer afraid. This wasn't just a victory for her. It was a victory for everyone who had ever been silenced, for everyone who had been made to feel small. It was a reminder that standing up for yourself was never easy, but it was always worth it. Jack's posture shifted, and for the first time, Jasmine saw something she hadn't expected. Remorse. Whether it was genuine or not, she didn't care. His power had crumbled in front of her eyes, and that was all that mattered. "Fine," Jack muttered, his voice low. "I don't have time for this anyway." With that, he turned and walked away, his group of friends trailing behind him like a string of lost puppies. Jasmine let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding, the weight in her chest slowly lifting. Tyrell turned to her with a proud grin. "You did good," he said, clapping her on the back. Jasmine couldn't help but smile back. She wasn't sure how it had happened, or how she had found the strength to stand up to Jack like that, but she was proud of herself. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she was in control, not of the situation necessarily, but of herself. She had faced her fears head on, and that was something no one could take away from her. "Thanks," she said softly, her voice still carrying the weight of everything that had just transpired. "But it's not over. This was just the beginning." Tyrell nodded. "I know, but you've taken the first step, and that's more than most people ever do." As the crowd slowly dispersed, Jasmine took a deep breath, finally allowing herself to relax. She had done it, and in doing so, she had proven to herself and to everyone else that she was stronger than any bully who came her way. The bell rang, signaling the end of lunch, and students began filtering back into their classrooms. But the energy in the hallways had shifted. The usual hum of chatter was replaced with hushed whispers and curious glances. Jasmine had been the center of attention before, but not like this. The weight of the moment still lingered on her shoulders, but now there was a sense of pride that filled the empty spaces inside her. Tyrell had walked her to her next class, a smile on his face as he teased her about the way she handled Jack. "You've got more guts than I ever gave you credit for," he joked, elbowing her gently. Jasmine smiled, grateful for his support. "I just did what I had to do. I wasn't going to let him push me around anymore." As they reached her classroom, she gave him a quick hug. "Thanks for having my back," she said, her voice sincere. "I don't think I could have handled it without you." Tyrell grinned. "Anytime. You know I got you." She watched him walk away before entering the classroom. As she took her seat, she noticed a few of her classmates looking in her direction. She tried to focus on her notebook, but it was impossible to ignore the stares. A few students whispered amongst themselves, but they kept their distance. But then something surprising happened. One by one, a few of the students who had always kept to themselves, those who had never paid much attention to her, approached her. They offered quiet nods of approval, some even giving her a thumbs up. It wasn't much, but it was something. It felt like a small victory, one that went beyond just standing up to Jack. Jasmine had made a statement, and now others were taking note. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Her mind kept drifting back to the confrontation with Jack, replaying the moment she had stood up for herself. She had never expected to feel that strong, that confident. It was as though something had unlocked inside of her, a deep well of power and resilience that she had never known existed. By the time the final bell rang and school let out, Jasmine was exhausted but elated. As she walked out of the building and headed toward her bus stop, her phone buzzed. It was a message from her mom. "Jazz, I heard what happened today. You handled yourself with such grace. I'm proud of you." Jasmine felt a lump form in her throat. Her mom's words meant everything to her. In that moment, she realized that she didn't need to prove anything to anyone else. Her self-worth didn't come from what others thought of her. It came from the way she saw herself. When she boarded the bus and took her seat, Jasmine felt different. She wasn't the same girl who had been pushed around, made to feel small and intimidated. She had taken control of her own narrative. She had turned the tables, and the power that had once been held over her was now in her hands. As the bus drove through the streets, Jasmine's mind raced with possibilities. She had stood up to a bully today, but she wasn't finished. This was just the beginning. She was ready to face whatever came next, because now Jasmine knew one thing for sure: no one could take her power away. The school year was coming to a close, and Jasmine stood at the front of her classroom, looking out over her peers with a sense of pride. The past few months had been an unexpected journey, one filled with growth, self-discovery, and lessons that she would carry with her for the rest of her life. She had started the year as a quiet, somewhat withdrawn student, but now she was someone entirely different. She had learned the value of standing up for herself, the strength of resilience, and the importance of standing against injustice. The moment she had faced Jack in the hallway had marked a turning point, but it wasn't just about that one instance. It was about everything that followed, the way she had carried herself in the face of adversity, how she had handled the whispers and the stares, and how she had made the choice to never let anyone's prejudice define her. As the final bell rang, signaling the end of her last day at Ridgewood High, Jasmine gathered her things, taking one last look around the room. Tyrell, who had been with her through thick and thin, gave her a thumbs up from the back of the class. She smiled, knowing that this chapter of her life was closing, but in many ways it felt like a new beginning. Walking out of the school building, Jasmine took a deep breath of fresh air. The sky was clear, the sun shining brightly overhead. Everything felt different. The weight she had carried for so long, the weight of self-doubt, of fear, of judgment, had lifted. In its place was a quiet confidence that came from knowing who she was and what she was capable of. As she walked down the steps, she saw a few of her classmates gathered nearby, talking and laughing. They had become part of her new reality, one in which she didn't have to shrink to fit in. She had earned their respect, not through force, but through the quiet strength of standing her ground and demanding the same respect she gave to others. "Hey, Jasmine," one of the girls called out to her. "You did a great job today." Jasmine smiled, her heart swelling. It wasn't just about the words, it was about the respect she had earned, the bridge that had been built between her and the others. She had broken down barriers, not with anger, but with grace and determination. "Thanks," she said, her voice steady but warm. "It's been a long year." As she walked away, heading toward the bus stop, she felt a sense of peace that had eluded her for so long. She knew that life would continue to throw challenges her way, but she was no longer afraid. She had learned to face them head on, knowing that her worth was not defined by anyone else's perceptions. Jasmine knew she was ready for whatever came next. Her journey was just beginning, and she was going to face it with the same strength and courage she had shown on that fateful day in the hallway. She was no longer just a quiet girl in the background. She was a force to be reckoned with, and she would carry that knowledge with her for the rest of her life. As she boarded the bus and took a seat by the window, Jasmine looked out at the world ahead. She had learned so much about herself, and she was excited to see where the future would take her. And for the first time in a long time, she was ready to embrace it all.